Part 1. The Mother as Our First Mirror. The relationship with our mother forms the very first blueprint of who we believe we are. Before we had words, before we knew our own name, she was the world. Her voice, her gaze, her touch were the first language our soul understood. If her arms were warm and steady, the world felt safe. If her eyes sparkled when they looked at us, we believed we mattered. But if her presence was cold or inconsistent, if her gaze was absent or disappointed, something inside us quietly shifted. We began to wonder, without knowing we were wondering, is something wrong with me? You see, the mother is more than a person. She is the mirror in which we first see ourselves. And this mirror is not neutral. It's shaped by her own wounds, her joys, her fears, her unspoken dreams. So we inherit not just her genes, but her story, her unlived life, her suppressed sadness, her hopes we were supposed to fulfill. That's why you can be 35, successful, admired, and still feel not enough. Still chasing a love that was never quite given the way you needed it. Reflect for a moment. When you were little, when you cried, when you were afraid, what did your mother do? Did she hold you, tell you it's okay to feel? Or did she turn away, too overwhelmed by her own unhealed pain to truly see you? These are not accusations. These are seeds of awareness. Because healing never begins from blame. It begins from truth. Your inner child is not just a memory. It's a living voice within you, still waiting to be seen with the tenderness that may never have come. And that's the invitation, to look back, not to stay in the past, but to understand how your present was shaped. To see your mother not as a perfect angel or a source of all your pain, but as a human who was once a child too. Because when you truly see her, you begin to truly see yourself. Not just the parts you perform to be loved, but the quiet, sacred core that was always worthy. When you were a child, how did your mother respond when you were in pain? Part 2. The mother as archetype, as symbol, not just a person. Carl Jung spoke of something deeper than the individual mother we each knew. He called it the mother archetype, a timeless, universal imprint carried not just in our memories, but in the very architecture of the soul. She is not merely the woman who raised you. She is an inner image, part instinct, part myth, of what it means to be nurtured, to be held, to be fed emotionally, spiritually, and physically. This archetype is ancient. She existed long before your story, long before your name was whispered in a hospital room. She lives in fairy tales, in dreams, in the primal longing to be seen and sheltered. Sometimes she comes as comfort, warm and gentle, whispering that you are enough. Sometimes she appears as terror, devouring, controlling, impossible to please. This duality is essential, because the mother archetype holds both the power to give life and the potential to consume it. She lives inside every one of us, regardless of gender, culture, or upbringing. Her voice may echo in how you care for others, or in how you deny your own needs. You might hear her when you push yourself too hard, chasing perfection, or when you abandon yourself in the name of pleasing someone else. This is why your mother, the real human being, was never just herself. She was also the projection screen for this archetype. For better or worse, when she held you, you weren't just feeling her skin. You were feeling the echo of every mother before her. And when she failed you, even just once, the pain may have pierced deeper than you knew. Because it wasn't just her who disappointed you. It was the very idea of what a mother should be. That's why these wounds are not easily explained. They live in the symbolic layer of the psyche, in the stories beneath the stories. You may not think about her every day. She may have passed away years ago, but her voice, her praise, her criticism, her silence, may still shape how you speak to yourself in the quiet moments. You may replay her tone when you doubt your worth. You may unconsciously seek her in lovers, in friends, even in strangers. And it's not because you're broken. It's because the archetype is alive, and it longs for resolution, for integration, for peace. So this isn't just about healing your relationship with your personal mother. It's about meeting the mother within, seeing her clearly, holding her sacred form with both reverence and truth. Even if your mother passed long ago, her voice may still echo within your decisions, your fears, your relationships. Part 3. Emotional patterns from unhealed memories. There are moments in life, moments in adulthood, when we find ourselves reacting more than choosing, apologizing for who we are, staying quiet when our heart aches to speak, or striving endlessly just to feel enough. We might call it people-pleasing, or fear of being alone, or that exhausting need to always get things just right. But underneath these behaviors lies something far more tender, a memory that never fully healed. Many of these struggles are not signs of weakness. They are echoes, emotional loops left behind from when we were too small to name the pain but large enough to feel it. These loops didn't begin yesterday. They began when we learned, often without words, that love might come at the cost of shrinking ourselves, that safety might mean silence, that affection might be earned, not freely given. And because we didn't yet have the tools to process those wounds, they got stored in the body, wrapped in nervous smiles, and buried under years of pretending everything was fine. We grow up, yes, but those unmet emotions, they don't grow old with us. They stay where we left them, in the hidden rooms of our psyche, quietly repeating themselves in the background. So when you find yourself afraid to speak your truth, or always apologizing for needing rest, or feeling anxious when someone pulls away, that's not just you being difficult. That's a wound calling out, softly, persistently, asking to be seen, not judged, to be held, not fixed. These patterns aren't stubborn. They're survivors. They were once brilliant strategies, created by a younger version of you, to keep love close, to keep pain away. And maybe no one gave you space back then to feel what you felt. Maybe your tears were met with "stop crying," or your fears dismissed with "don't be so sensitive." So those feelings stayed hidden, not because you were weak, but because you were wise enough to survive. Unhealed wounds don't disappear. They whisper until we finally listen. Healing doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means giving it a name. It means letting that small voice inside you, once silenced, finally be heard, not just by the world, but by you. These emotional patterns are not permanent. They are invitations to turn inward with gentleness, to feel what was once unfelt, and to reclaim the parts of you that never stopped hoping for warmth. And perhaps the most sacred part of this journey is not fixing yourself, but realizing you were never broken, just waiting to be held by the very love you were once denied. Part 4. Love with conditions leaves invisible scars. Some of us were raised in homes where love was present, but it didn't always feel free. It came wrapped in conditions, like quiet contracts written between the lines of every praise and every frown. We were loved, but only when we were calm, when we achieved, when we behaved in ways that made others proud. Be good, they said. Be quiet. Don't make a scene. Make her proud. Don't disappoint. The words weren't cruel, but they were heavy, and we carried them. It was love, but it was love we had to earn. Love we had to prove ourselves worthy of again and again. So we learned to monitor our tone, our feelings, even our joy. We became experts at shrinking our needs to fit the size of their comfort. We silenced anger, buried sadness, and apologized for being too much, or not enough. And while the world might look at us and say, "You were lucky, you were loved," what they don't see is what we weren't allowed to feel. The emotional neglect in these homes was subtle, almost invisible. It hid in expectations, in performance, in smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. Even in loving homes, emotional neglect can exist. It hides in the things we weren't allowed to feel. And so we grew into adults who are kind and capable, yet secretly exhausted from performing, from always wondering, will they still love me if I stop being who they need me to be? These invisible scars don't bleed, but they ache. They show up in our relationships, in our self-worth, in the quiet panic that comes when we disappoint someone we love. We learn to give so much, yet hesitate to receive. We're quick to forgive others, but harsh with ourselves. We keep peace outside but carry wars inside. And though the world may call us strong, underneath, we're still longing for a love that says, "You don't need to do anything to be worthy." Healing begins when we finally question that voice inside that says, "You have to earn love." It begins when we realize that being loved for our performance is not the same as being loved for our presence. It begins when we dare to feel, openly, imperfectly, fully, without fear that it will cost us love. And in those quiet moments of truth, we finally whisper to ourselves what no one else ever said. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. Part 5. The turning point. Seeing the mother as human. There comes a moment in every healing journey when the story we've always told ourselves, about who she was, about what she gave or didn't give, begins to soften, not because we forget, but because we begin to understand. Healing doesn't begin when we assign blame. It begins when we see, truly see, beyond the roles, beyond the wounds, beyond the pedestal or the prison. Our mother, she wasn't a goddess nor a villain, though some days she may have seemed like both. She was a human being, just human, fragile, unfinished, shaped by her own unseen scars and unloved parts. She had her own pain she never spoke of, pain that curled up inside her like a secret guest who never left. She had needs that were never met, dreams she had to bury, emotions she never felt safe enough to name. She wrestled with her own archetypes, the dutiful daughter, the martyr, the caregiver, the silent one. Roles she was handed, roles she never chose. What you received from her was often filtered through the lens of what she never received for herself. And when we pause and ask gently, what happened in her childhood that shaped the way she loved me? We start to feel the walls crumble. We stop expecting her to be something she was never taught to be. We stop clinging to the fantasy that maybe one day she'll change, say the words we longed for, or finally see us as we needed to be seen. Instead, we begin to accept that some things were never personal. They were generational. We grieve the love we didn't get, not to stay stuck in the past, but to free ourselves from carrying it into the future. We learn to hold her story with compassion, without excusing the harm, but without condemning the human either. And in doing so, we give ourselves something she may have never known how to give: grace. That's the turning point, not the moment we forget, but the moment we see her as she is and finally say, I understand, and I release you. Part 6. Projection. When we carry our mother into every relationship. There's a quiet truth that few of us realize until we begin to look deeper into our patterns, into our triggers, our heartbreaks, our need for control, our fear of abandonment. And that truth is this: we don't leave our mothers in the past. We carry her with us, everywhere. We carry her into our relationships without knowing it, into the arms of lovers who never seem to fully approve of us, into conversations with friends where we shrink ourselves not to be too much, into workplaces where the boss's frown feels like the end of the world. We project the mother image onto the people around us. And suddenly, they're no longer just people. They become mirrors reflecting our deepest, unresolved needs. We seek approval in places we shouldn't have to. We ache for validation as if our worth still hangs on someone else's nod. We fear disappointing them like we once feared the look in her eyes when we made a mistake. And without realizing it, we begin to play the same roles we once learned to survive. The pleaser who never says no, the rebel who always pushes away love, the lost child who waits to be found. These roles don't just repeat. They become the story we live inside until we become conscious of the script. We overreact to small rejections, spiral over silence, break inside when someone pulls away, not because the moment was truly unbearable, but because it echoed a wound we've been carrying since childhood. And in those moments, when your heart clenches over something so small, pause. Listen. Ask yourself gently, whose voice am I really hearing? Whose approval am I still chasing? Because maybe it's not your partner who failed to text back. Maybe it's not your boss who doesn't see your effort. Maybe it's not your friend who forgot your birthday. Maybe it's the ghost of your mother's silence whispering through the cracks of your grown-up world. These projections aren't our fault. They were formed in the most vulnerable place of all, the place where we first learned how to be loved. But becoming aware of them, that's where our power begins. Because every time we pause, breathe, and ask, is this about now or is this about then? We untangle one more thread from the web, and slowly, with tenderness, not judgment, we begin to separate them from her. We begin to see people as they are, not as echoes of who we once needed. That's the beginning of emotional freedom. Not by changing others, but by waking up to the ancient roles we no longer need to play. Part 7. Learning to mother yourself. The path to healing is not about severing old ties or running away from the past. It is about growing new connections within yourself. Connections rooted in love, patience, and kindness that perhaps you never received before. To mother yourself means to become your own safe harbor, your own source of comfort when the storms of life rage outside and inside your mind. It means learning to hold your own hand, whispering words of reassurance to the scared parts of you that still carry old wounds. This kind of self-mothering is not about perfection or fixing what's broken. It's about offering the love you longed for without conditions or judgment. It means saying softly to yourself, "You are safe now. You are already enough." Not because you have earned it, but simply because you exist. Imagine holding your inner child close, with the tenderness you always wished for. Letting that small part of you know it will never be abandoned again. This is a sacred conversation. One where you listen more than you speak, where you honor the pain without trying to erase it, and where you celebrate the resilience that has carried you this far. Healing is a journey of repeated kindness to yourself, even on the days when the wounds feel fresh or the past feels heavy. It is a steady, loving presence that tells you, you are held, you are seen, you are loved. If you could say one thing to your inner child today, what would it be? Would it be a word of forgiveness, a promise to protect, a simple reminder that they are not alone? That question opens a door to deeper connection, a door that leads to freedom from old fears and the birth of new hope. And as you step through that door, you begin to rewrite your story, not as a tale of abandonment, but as a story of self-love and rebirth. This is the gentle power of self-mothering, nurturing the parts of you that were once forgotten and creating a sanctuary inside where your spirit can rest and grow. You don't have to wait for someone else's love to feel whole, because the love you cultivate within becomes your true home. In this moment, with tenderness and care, give yourself permission to be exactly who you are, a being worthy of unconditional love, healing, and peace. Part 8. The story of Clara, a woman who finally understood. Clara was a woman many would call successful. Her life seemed perfect on the surface, with achievements that sparkled like stars in a clear night sky. Yet beneath that shining exterior, she carried a quiet emptiness that no accolade could fill, a restless need to prove herself that echoed through her days like a soft but persistent whisper. Every time her boss criticized her work, Clara didn't just hear words. She felt as though she had shrunk back into her 6-year-old self, small, vulnerable, and utterly crushed by the weight of silence that once defined her childhood. That crushing feeling wasn't really about the boss or the present moment. It was the echo of her mother's silence, the unspoken message that she was never quite enough, carried inside her like an invisible scar. In a quiet moment during therapy, Clara saw this truth with new eyes, the realization that her reactions were not about her current life, but about the echoes of a distant past she hadn't fully acknowledged before. That day marked a turning point. She stopped chasing love from the outside, trying to fill the emptiness with approval, and instead began the tender, brave work of giving love to herself, one gentle step at a time. Healing didn't mean Clara stopped loving her mother. It meant she learned to love herself, to recognize that the love she sought outside was waiting patiently within, ready to be embraced without conditions. This new love was not loud or dramatic, but a quiet presence that whispered, "You are enough. You are safe. You are deeply loved," filling the empty spaces that once felt hollow and cold. Clara's journey reminds us that the greatest healing often begins when we stop fighting the shadows of our past and start inviting the light of self-compassion to heal those hidden wounds. When we stop running toward approval and start turning inward, we create a sanctuary inside. A place where our inner child feels seen, heard, and finally safe to rest. What if you, like Clara, could pause and listen to the whispers of your own heart? What truths would you find waiting there, beneath the surface of your daily struggles? Healing is not about perfection or erasing the past. It's about learning to carry our stories with kindness, turning pain into wisdom, and emptiness into a wellspring of love. Clara's story invites us all to begin again, not by denying our past, but by embracing it with the gentle hands of understanding and the open heart of compassion. Part 9. Healing equals integration, not rejection. True healing does not mean pushing your mother out of your heart or pretending she never existed, as if removing her would erase the pain. Instead, healing invites us to see her in full clarity, with all her flaws, all her wounds, and all the love she tried to give in the only way she knew. It is about gently unfolding the layers of blame, resentment, and idealization that clouded our vision, so we can hold the whole truth without fear or anger. To hold her story alongside ours, as two threads woven tightly in the same tapestry. The moment we stop blaming her for what she did or did not do, or placing her on an unreachable pedestal, we free ourselves from the cage of endless conflict and longing. That moment is the true doorway to freedom, when we integrate this understanding, that she was human, imperfect, trying to navigate her own suffering. We begin to hold compassion in our hearts, both for her and for ourselves. This integration is the gentle fire that burns away judgment and lights the way toward peace, where our hearts are no longer divided but whole and free. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that says, to understand is to love, and to love is to be free. When we truly see someone not as a figure from our past, but as a complex human being, we open the door to genuine love. Not possessive or conditional, but liberating and healing. Healing is not about erasing the past or denying the pain. It is about weaving those experiences into the fabric of who we are with kindness and wisdom, allowing the past to be a foundation, not a prison. When we hold the whole story, her story, our story, and the space between, we create a sanctuary within, where forgiveness and acceptance quietly reside like an unshakable calm. This is the path to true freedom, not through rejection or escape, but through deep, compassionate integration of all that we have experienced, all that has shaped us. Imagine carrying your mother's story gently in your heart, not as a burden, but as a part of your own strength and growth. How does that shift your understanding of healing? Healing is an invitation to open your heart wider than ever before, to include the painful, the beautiful, the imperfect, and find in that wholeness a love that is free. Part 10. A final invitation. Rewrite your story. You are not bound by the past, not by the stories written before you, nor by the wounds that once seemed to define you, because now you stand as the one who witnesses all of it, the one who holds the power to rewrite the meaning and to choose how you will carry your story forward. You are not your wounds. Those marks on your heart are not the sum of your being. Rather, you are the clear, steady light that sees those wounds with compassion, the witness that does not judge but simply observes and begins to heal. When you begin to understand your mother, not as an ideal, not as a source of blame, but as a human being shaped by her own pain and love, you start to see yourself with new eyes, eyes that hold empathy and kindness, breaking the cycle of misunderstanding and separation. And when you begin to understand yourself deeply, in all your complexity and beauty, the fear that once ruled your decisions and your relationships begins to dissolve, replaced by the quiet strength of love, the kind that chooses peace even in the face of uncertainty. Living from love means waking up every day with the willingness to be present with all that is, your joy, your pain, your growth, and letting that presence guide your choices, your relationships, and your path forward with gentle courage. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and healing. The invitation is simply to be present in this moment, exactly as you are, and to be willing to begin again with softness, with patience, and with hope in your heart. If you feel the call to heal, to rewrite your story with love and understanding, you are not alone in this journey. Even the smallest step toward healing sends ripples of light that touch others in ways you may never see. If this message speaks to your heart, I invite you to leave a single dot, a simple "e" in the comments as a quiet signal to others that they are not alone, that together we walk this path toward freedom and peace. Please share this video with someone who might be unknowingly carrying the weight of their mother's shadow, so that healing can begin to ripple outward, transforming pain into love and separation into unity. And if you wish to continue exploring insights on emotional healing and spiritual awakening, I welcome you to subscribe to join this community of gentle hearts seeking truth, compassion, and freedom together.